Just a little bit about Pop Palace. We're a blog and podcast, and we're dedicated to celebrating iconic women and LGBTQ people in music history, specifically in pop music. When I decided to do artist interviews, I immediately thought of you. You kind of fit right into Pop Palace. And so I'm so excited to have you.
Amazing.
Just want to say thank you. Um,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
can you introduce yourself and give us a glimpse into how you started music?
Yeah, I'm Ellie. I make music as SuperKnova, she, her, hers pronouns. I make queer indie pop music. I'm a guitarist and producer. And yeah.
So your music, oh sorry, my cat is getting in the way.
Oh, cute.
Your music uniquely blends like electronic beats with indie pop vibes. How did you land on this mix of genres and what drew you to the sound?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it comes from a lot of places. Before I started SuperKnova, I used to just be like a session guitarist. Growing up, I thought I was just going to be a professional guitar player, just like, playing on people's albums, playing in bands, playing in backing bands. That's what I did for a little while. I went to conservatory for music. I studied jazz guitar, and just played in like every band you can think of in every genre. I played, rock, pop, hip hop, R&B, punk rock. I played in a metal band. I played in a country band, like, just a little bit of everything. And so I definitely bring some of that experience, of my experience playing in those, diverse genres to what I do with SuperKnova. It is squarely, pretty much pop for the most part, but or indie pop. But yeah, I feel like I'm always thinking about different elements, and I'm not really thinking about any specific genre or pop specifically when I write. And sometimes I can create a more unique sound.
I love that. Speaking of like not having boundaries and not sticking to like one confine, do you find that in the way you dress and your like physical aesthetic? Um, I feel like you have it all well correlated, and you definitely have like a built aesthetic. And is that something that came naturally to you, or is that something that you had planned out?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, a little bit of both. I obviously try to do things that and wear things and make visuals that resonate with me or come from a place that inspires me. Um, it's definitely a little bit intentional. Like I definitely work to make things cohesive. Partially because I like artists. I look up to artists who have a very cohesive visual aesthetic. Um, an artist that I was inspired on very early on and still am is like Saint Vincent, with how she leans into fashion and subtle ways to queerness and the way that she performs and the outfit she wears. Yeah, but it comes from a lot of different places, not just music. From different things like from movies or shows or things that I see that I think are really cool and I want to try to emulate or make my version of.
I love that. Um, if you could have one of your songs in like any universe, music or TV, is there like a specific show or movie that you would love to have it in?
Ooh, what a good question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that specific question. It's a good one. Oh, it's so funny. I don't know if this is like the perfect one, but just like recently, I just like finished season 3 of Heartstopper, that very like wholesome LGBTQ show. I think my last record has some of that energy and would fit really well into Heartstopper. I don't know about the first album or the stuff I'm writing now, but definitely like Super Universe. I think sometimes can fit into that world. It would be really
Yeah,
cool to see.
I could
Yeah,
definitely see that. That'd be
yeah,
so cute. I would love that.
I know.
Um, so your songs touch on personal themes and identity, specifically queerness. When you're like writing music and creating new songs, does your queerness is it something that you're actively thinking about when writing music, or is it something that's just a part of everything you do?
Hmm. Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think definitely when I made my first EP, Sponges for way back when, it was definitely like an intentional part of it. I think I've mentioned in, other things before that, I didn't necessarily plan to start SuperKnova. I started writing songs when I was coming out and transitioning, and kind of as therapy for myself to help me process emotions around coming out. And, you know, uh, like I wrote them, and I really didn't plan on releasing them, but I showed them to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Oh, these are really good. You should put them up on Bandcamp." And I was like, "No, no one wants to hear this crap." And and he's like, "No, no, you should." And like eventually, I kind of thought about it. I was like, "Well, I want back then. There's still not a ton of trans artists in the mainstream, but even less than there are today. Now there's a little bit more, but and so I was like, well, I want to hear more music from trans artists. I like seeing trans indie artists like on Bandcamp myself as a fan. So I was like, well, I'll make it for the people like me. And so, and then that album did, pretty well, or at least a lot better than I thought it would. And then, it kind of grew and grew from there. So I think at that time, for sure, I was writing those songs deeply from a personal space about queerness, explicitly queer, explicitly trans. And that was both natural and intentional. I think with Super Universe, because I had done that for so long as an artist, I wanted to do something different. And so I think for Super Universe, things are a little less explicitly queer, while still having like subtle queerness in some of the songs for sure, but maybe not as explicitly in the lyrical content. And so I think it can be both, depending on where I'm at as a person, and also where I was or am at as an artist.
Definitely. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're making music and that queer people are making music and putting it out in the world. That can also be a lot on yourself. And how do you keep yourself well maintained and your self care in check while also going through all of those emotions and also giving it to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I'm sure you know or imagine, even at my level, even as an smaller indie artist, occasionally my stuff will get on the wrong side of the algorithm. I'll just get inundated with transphobic hate, just like, and some platforms are better than others. Actually, TikTok's algorithm's pretty good to me. Reels is 50-50. Shorts is like, I have all comments off on all my videos because it's just like, every day I was just getting just like tons of hate messages, like transphobic, violent, disgusting comments. And, so, it can be a tough balance, in addition to, not outside of transness, just like being an indie artist in 2024, it has its ups and downs. It can be very difficult. It's a grind, in a very unique way. I think what keeps me going is being able to, like, the positive flip side of that, of like, because of TikTok, because of Reels, because of YouTube Shorts, like the internet, social media, like I've been able to connect with, so many people, queer, trans people across the world, who send me messages that, that my music has helped them in some way, whether to figure out who they were, to help them come out, to feel confident in who they were, or just that my music, made their day. Not just queer people, because obviously these themes of being who you want to be and, not listening to societal expectations. I mean, that's good for everybody, right? Not just queer trans people. And so I think that definitely keeps me going, in both online and in person, when I get to meet people and wonderful queer people like you, who I get to connect with in a way that I would never outside of art and music. So I try to, not to be toxically positive, but I try to focus on that aspect of it. And when it does happen in a good way, it definitely keeps me going.
Yeah, definitely. Um, have you had an experience like with a fan or meeting someone that admires your music that has really like resonated with you or sticks in your mind as like a really memorable experience?
Yeah, for sure. I think, so many and so many good and bad. And by being bad, I mean just like sad, because I know that, I live in New York City, where, not to say there's not transphobia here, there absolutely is, but, I live in somewhat of a bubble compared to some people in other countries, other parts of the United States. So, I think I get a lot of really powerful emotional messages from people who live in places that are less accepting or liberal than where I live. I don't know where you're based. If you're based, are you in the United States
Yes, I'm
specifically?
in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so I definitely understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the ups and downs, I'm sure, of
Yeah.
that region. But yeah, I think there was someone, who was in, I want to say it was Turkey, where at the time, and maybe this is still the case, it was just actually illegal to be gay. Like, you could actually be arrested for organizing like an LGBTQ organization. And they were filming a documentary, and they asked if they could use one of my songs for the documentary, and just hearing about their experience, like literally just trying to live where they were, was really powerful. Yeah, just like little things here and there from people who've told me, help them to come out, or feel confident whoever they were, wherever they were. Every time I feel very moved, and I'm very honored to be able to connect with those people.
That's awesome. That's so sweet. I love that.
Yeah.
I really feel that same way because, like, there's obviously queer people in Oklahoma, but a lot of the times I'm finding people through the internet who are not in my location, but I can still connect with them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I really resonate with that.
Absolutely.
Growing up, did you have any idols you could relate to and see yourself in?
Ooh, growing up, there wasn't as many, especially as an Asian American. I feel like there was even like people who looked like me. Again, there's a little bit more now. I think maybe the first I saw was like a Laverne Cox, maybe, when Orange is the New Black came out, if you ever watched that show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like, I think that was one of the first times I saw like, wow, like a relatively positive representation of trans women in media. I think the other one was oh my goodness, what is her name? It was a model, Bosnian model, Andrea Pejic, who was a fashion model for a while. I think she's retired now, or does other things now. Was an actress for a while, and just seeing her again, like in a relatively positive light as like this supermodel, those were probably like the two earliest positive inspirations. And now in the recent years, last like 5-ish years, you see more and more. You have your Sophies, you have Kim Petras, you have Ethel Caines, all these Hunter Schaefers, all of them. Still not that many POC or Asian American, but you have more trans women, trans people in media. So yeah, I think it's slowly getting better, but definitely not enough.
Yeah, definitely. Me and Laverne Cox have the same birthday.
Oh my god!
Yeah, not the same year, but still so
cute.
Sweet.
Oh my gosh, that's super cute.
How do you envision the future of queer music? Do you see like any specific trends, and is there something that like a vision you have for queer music that's not necessarily a prediction, but something that you envision?
Yeah, I absolutely hope, like most people, that like queerness becomes like an indelible part of pop music as it is, but in both more blatant and less blatant ways. And by that I mean in that like it's not a big deal, obviously, if someone is queer or trans, but also can be very much a feature point of people's identities in pop music. I hope that there's more diversity in general in pop music and in music across the board, whether that be across race or age or disability, so on and so forth. I think that it would be really nice to see more, because right now I feel like we have mostly, this is no shade to anybody, but more the palatable like trans stars. You have like the Kim Petras, who obviously is very open about her story, but like, I don't think most people would know that. If she didn't talk about it, I don't think they would know that she was transgender. Again, not any fault of her own, but just like, I'm not sure if she would have had as much mainstream success if she was someone who looked more visible and sounded more visibly trans. And it's nice to see, like, I guess people like, oh my goodness, Sam Smith, who, maybe is a little more subversively queer, I suppose. They were a little bit more, they were kind of famous before they came out, which I think is a blessing for them. But it'd be nice to see more just like visible queerness, visible transness, more just like subversive queerness. I live for that stuff, and I hope that becomes more mainstream as well.
Me too. I love that. I see it too, and that's part of the reason I started Pop Palace is being in Oklahoma. There's a good amount of different people, but not a lot of queer people. And I want to be able to teach other people that we do exist and we're here, even if you're not seeing us.
Absolutely.
And so I love that so much.
Yeah.
So when you're not making music or doing anything music related, do you have any other hobbies or anything that takes up your time?
Yeah, this is kind of a weird one, but I play in a queer basketball league in New York City, like a recreational queer. It's like a queer. I'm in two. There's one that's like specifically trans femmes, like it's like all trans femme basketball, and then one that's just like general LGBTQ. That's like one of the main things I do. And then I also I really love indie movies, so I'm like always going to like indie movie film fest. Like I love weird esoteric movies. I
Hmm.
like things that are like not mainstream that no one's ever heard of. Some of those are my favorite works of art in general, movies, music, whatever it is. Um, and so yeah, I think those so basically those three things is like my whole life. It's like music, queer like sports leagues or like indie art, indie music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your queer sports leagues, do you like when you're playing a game, are you playing against other queer people or do you play against straight people?
Yeah, I think well it's actually funny. So the leagues that are queer, it's like all queer people
Oh, okay, okay.
throughout the whole league. And some of them are
That's so
like
fun.
yeah, it's really cool and it's I think it's very unique to New York City just because there's so many people here and so many queer people here. So like one of them is huge. It's like, three divisions, there's hundreds of people in it. There's like draft, there's like sponsors, there's a whole lot.
Stop.
Yeah, it's wild. There's even like there's a queer flag football league that I was in for like or like briefly in, but it's sponsored by the New York Giants, which I would have never
What?
thought that the NFL would sponsor like a queer. You know what I mean? Like it's to me
Yeah,
that's just like
that's
like
wild.
yeah. So I was just like, wow, this is just really interesting, and especially at a time like this with like trans people in sports. I think it's both a fun time, good community, and like a powerful political statement. To have a bunch
Yeah,
of queer people or trans femmes playing basketball in New York City. I think it's really wonderful.
that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever been drafted to a team?
Yeah. I'm actually I'm in that league now. Like they just had the draft.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's like everyone gets. If you're in the league, it's not like
Okay, yeah,
it's more friendly. Like it's not like the playground where like people like don't get picked.
yeah.
It's like
That's so
yeah,
cool.
everyone gets drafted to a team. It's just a matter of where you go. Yeah, but
Oh my gosh, that's something I would so do.
yeah, it's super fun and yeah. Well, if you're ever in New York, you should stop by,
Yeah,
drop in a
definitely.
game. Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question. So at Pop Palace, we love asking our guests to curate their own royal court. So of musical
Hmm.
influences, so who would be part of your court? Would there be someone sitting on the throne, and then who would be in your the court part?
Wow. Okay. How many seats do I get?
um, we can do four.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. I would say for sure Sophie. Sophie would probably reign the court.
Yep.
I have so much respect for her as a producer and as an artist. Um. Ooh. Who else? Saint Vincent I mentioned is such a big influence on me. Um. Who else? Sophie, Saint Vincent, probably King Princess in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um. And then. Hmm. Maybe just because it was an early big influence on me, like Frank Ocean, maybe
Okay.
I might
Yeah,
throw in there. Yeah.
definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was so great to meet you. Um,
Yeah, so lovely to meet you.